Hello, everybody. Once again, this is episode, I think, number 26 of the Raw Men podcast. Today, we are interviewing Christine Shellska, president of Atheist Alliance International. And how are you doing, Christine?
Great. Thank you very much for having me on.
You know, when I first met you, it was funny that you were interviewing me.
Yes. Yeah.
Turnabout, fair play, all of that. So you've come up in the world a little bit. President of AAI?
Yep. If I can brag a bit more, I'm also on the board of directors for the American Humanist Association. I am the first Canadian to be on that board. And I'm also a co-host on the Legion of Reason podcast, which, like you said, you've joined us on before, and I hope you will again. And I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Calgary. So, yeah.
Well, congrats on the last one. What are you going for what is your doctorate going to be?
I look at the rhetorical strategies of the intelligent design movement. Yeah.
You're getting a doctorate in refuting intelligent design.
I don't know if I'm refuting it so much as interrogating their rhetorical strategies, right?
But I mean, you're getting a doctorate.
I think by definition that kind of does refute it, but
I mean, they offer a doctorate program in refuting intelligent design.
Kind of. I mean, it's got theoretical, theories I'm bringing to bear on how I'm doing that analysis, but yeah, kind of.
Hey, that's outstanding. I want to go for a degree like that. All right, so give me some idea of what you do as I'm interested in all of it, really. I mean, what you do. Let's start with the American Humanist Association. What do you do there?
Well, I'm on their board of directors, and they do a lot of great work. They've got the legal foundation, and they're very big advocates of particularly American type issues, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I've been to a couple of their conferences, and the AHA does very posh events.
That's where you and I met. Where I interviewed you. Yeah.
Yeah, they were really exquisite. I mean, the hotels that have been for both of the conferences that I attended were just really extravagant. Really, I think posh is probably the best word for it.
Yeah, they do put on an amazing event. Yeah.
And you know what?
They do great work.
Yeah, and they've never invited me to speak, by the way.
Really? Uh-oh.
All right.
That should change.
Thank you. Okay. So you get the which I'm still laughing at, a doctorate in refuting intelligent design. That's outstanding.
Well, if they give it to me, we'll see, right?
But I mean, this requires that you previously had a bachelor's and a master's in that.
Well, actually, bachelor's in communication studies, master's in communication studies. But when I did my master's, I actually looked at pregnancy and childbirth from a feminist perspective, and kind of a critical take on how women are kind of medicalized when they go through pregnancy and childbirth. And so, I took quite a few years off to raise my daughter, who's now 18. And, during that time, I thought I really wanted to go back and do my PhD. And I thought, what's a fantastic topic? And I kept reading about this nonsense coming up again and again and again. And I never heard such preposterous nonsense that people would, because I grew up in a place where evolution is just taken for granted, right? Like nobody questions evolution. And when people do, people kind of like, haha, isn't that cute?
There's a strange thing of perspective that everybody thinks that. I mean, I got to tell you that when I grew up, I was in an exclusively creationist environment, and yet I didn't realize it. I didn't realize it. I mean, I knew what I had seen from documentaries and what I had read in books and everything, and I just assumed that everybody else knows pretty much what I do. And so I was an adult before I started to piece together that nobody knew anything, that everybody around me was in this alternate reality. And that while I clearly thought that everybody knows this, no. I see this a lot. I see this like in Sweden. Some people were saying, well, we don't have creationists here. And then right away, I pull up a news article about how they're opening a young earth creationism school in Sweden. And I said, are you quite sure about that? you know.
Well, it's
And
creeping out, isn't it? Little tentacles are
they
reaching
said the
outside
same
the
thing.
US, you know? Yeah.
They said the same thing in England, right? I mean, the English always said, we don't have these people here. That's an American problem, right? And then I get a half a dozen different young Earth creationist evangelical weirdos, all with very definitely British accents. I'm like, oh, where are all these people cropping up from? You know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
Maybe
the
because we
Brits.
don't kind of point and laugh at them anymore. We're more polite, I don't know.
And you just assume that the person next to you on the bus knows that or on the subway or the tube or whatever, you know, that they know the same thing as the average person. And the sad thing is that you probably know more than the average person. You're giving too many other people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's yeah, kind of the opposite. I'd be really hard pressed to think of, you know, growing up with anybody who actually believed in creationism. You know, there might have been deist types and very moderate Christians who were completely able to negotiate evolution with, you know, their belief in God or whatever. And so, you know, like I said, as I started reading about this stuff in, you know, magazines like Skeptic and Skeptical Inquirer and, you know, types like this, right? I'm like, why isn't this going away?
Now, see,
And
you
the tactics become more sophisticated. They get quite responsive to the rational arguments, and they get more, I guess, they craft their narrative more effectively, right? So even though people like you and I and scientists and fortunately some judicial bodies know it's a bunch of crap, but it's persuasive to the broader public, right? Which is
yeah.
mind-blowing. You know, the education system is obviously failing, right? You know, yeah.
Yeah, and here's another problem. See, I mean, you would expect scientists to be able to refute this, and they would at least be able to convey an adequate explanation of it. But I very often find that even scientists and certainly science teachers are woefully inadequate to the task, which is really amazing to me. I mean, my kids went through public school here, and even when we could find a science teacher that wasn't a creationist, because 20% of our science teachers are creationists.
Wow, wow.
Yeah. Well, when we find one that's not, they're still very often confused. You know, I mean, like, and I understand that my area of interest is in the classification of life forms, so I'm going to notice when somebody makes a mistake here. But when, you know, somebody says that they were doing like these science experiments, and we had this the one experimental idea that my son wanted to put together, which was this rotating disc that you build a room out of it. And here was the idea: you ever been on one of these amusement park rides where it spins and you're stuck to the wall?
Yeah, those are
Okay.
cool.
Well, we wanted to make one of those that would spin just at the appropriate speed for this disc that we had that was like 3 feet across, and we were going to make this disc-shaped room with a cone at the top, and at the top of the cone would have a webcam staring with a view of the entire room, so that you can see the whole thing, and then the camera is wireless and completely fixed so that it doesn't vibrate or anything, and you would just spin this, and so what you would see is a room that sits still. And we were going to have some mice in here. And on one side of the room, we were going to have against the wall, we were going to have a wheel, the kind of wheel that they play on. And then we were going to have the water bottle. And of course, we were going to have the food dish. And we were going to have all of this against the wall in a room that spins so that the mice are stuck to the wall the whole time it's spinning while they're being recorded. And the idea was, we're talking about an idea of centrifugal force and how we do artificial gravity. And I wanted to show whether the mice would eat, drink, and play on the wheel. And if they do all three, I mean, the wheel being the real particular one, if they do all three, then obviously they're under no duress from this spinning, even with the earth, you know, offsetting the gravity. And this was part of our little experiment that we came up with. We got a rotating fan motor and made this thing, and we were going to do this experiment, but they said that we couldn't use any live animals. And so I said, okay, well, so we can't use, he said, you can't use any vertebrates. And I said, oh, okay, well, if we can't use any vertebrates, then maybe we could try something else, like cockroaches. And he said, no, you can't use any vertebrates. And I was stunned. Cockroaches are not vertebrates. But he thinks cockroaches mean, or the vertebrates means animal.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Or that
Yeah.
somehow
Yeah.
vertebrate means living thing. I'm not sure what his confusion was there. But here I am trying to explain to the science teacher that cockroaches don't have spines. Another of the science teacher is also confused in the same school, was also confused about this whole spinal thing because she was convinced that snakes were invertebrates because they were too squiggly and wiggly to have bones.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So this is the level of
Yeah.
teachers that
Yeah.
we get. So if you
Yeah.
wonder
Yeah.
about how
Yeah.
it is that so many people can believe in creationism, that's how they're being inadequately trained. And famously, my son was also in another high school class where they're supposed to teach evolution and actually have the textbooks that are intended to do that. And the teacher, being a creationist in this case, told the class that there were no examples of beneficial mutations. And this
Hmm.
is why evolution could not be true and was only a theory and all this. So my son had the textbook open and he said, "But teacher, the textbook lists beneficial mutations." And my boy was sent to the office for insubordination.
Oh. Oh. Wow.
I
Wow.
wanted to
Wow.
make that teacher famous. And my son's mother insisted that I stay out of it and that I let my boy finish school without raising a fuss.
Yeah. I guess. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's
Just
not my
like
opinion at all.
school or just the
When you're
grade?
deliberately when you're deliberately lying to your students, you need to be all blown up about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had every right to go off all go all internet on that guy, but she wouldn't let it happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so getting back to you, what I assume in your activities you don't have anything to do with shoving mice into a centrifuge. What what do you do
Not so
for
far.
atheist? What do you do for Atheist Alliance International?
Well, I just got nominated to my second term, or sorry, elected to my second term as president, which I'm very grateful for, and very happy for the confidence of the rest of the board, who are awesome. And I guess our three primary areas of focus are international, educational, secular outreach, exercising a UN consultative status, and trying to help people with asylum, right? Which is something that's in its infancy at this point. We're learning as we go. We're trying to establish relationships with other organizations, right? Quite often it's a case, well, it is a case that in order to qualify for asylum, you need to get out of your country and get refugee status somewhere, and then you can proceed with that asylum case, right? So at this point, sometimes the best we can do is just offer advice and maybe modest legal fees and stuff like that, right? Letters, I can help write letters to the UNHCR and that kind of thing. We do have, like I said, UN special consultative status, so that gives us a little bit of cred, but it's a process and it can take years. And I know a little bit more about Canada, obviously, and a bit about the States, but we're hoping to get together more information on other target countries where people can seek safe refuge, right?
Yeah, every time I go to
So,
Canada, I hear about somebody that is seeking refugee status there, trying to be protected up there. The first time I went
yeah.
for Imagine No Religion 3, they were in quite an opposite situation than what you're describing right now. There was a guy that they were going to send back to Saudi Arabia, that Canada wasn't going to allow him to stay there, and it had already been announced that upon arrival he was going to be killed, which
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah,
was
yeah.
really, I'm stunned that Canada would knowingly send somebody back to their death like this.
So am I. You know what? I didn't hear about that person. Do you know what happened? Like, 'cause I simply didn't hear about that
No, I
one.
mean, I can only assume that it all worked out because I didn't hear anything after that. But I knew that there was
Yeah,
a lot of
yeah,
people that were at that conference that were outraged about it. I mean, because I met the guy at an atheist conference, so there's his fate sealed there.
yeah,
I've since
yeah,
heard of a number of other people who are in Canada on the same situation, but this time protected. So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, this is where I hope that trend had changed. What other countries are doing this sort of thing?
Well, I don't know, quite a few. Like, I think if you look up like humanitarian countries who are signed on to that, who abide by the UN Declaration of Human Rights, there's probably a list. Like, I'm thinking, Turkey apparently is one.
Turkey offers asylum.
Yeah. It's a good, I guess, departure point to get somewhere else, kind of thing, right?
Well, that's outstanding. Yeah.
Yeah, it is really, isn't it? Yeah, I don't know. UAE of all places. I know one guy's trying to get out of where he is to the UAE and hopefully get asylum. I don't know how. I might have chosen a different place if I were him, but but yeah, no, there's a few places. Like I said, we have to do more research on that. Sweden, some of the more obvious ones in Europe and that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised.
Yeah.
I'm really surprised to hear about Turkey because
Yeah.
one of my coworkers once upon a time was Iranian who had escaped from his own military, and part of the story was he was in a helicopter, and when the helicopter was taking off, it was in a forested area, and he jumped out.
Wow. Okay.
He jumped out and scurried away, so that he knew that it would be difficult to go land the helicopter again to go try to hunt him down, and he's already on the run. So he figured he had made his escape, and he said that he had to work his way some way all the way across Turkey to get to Greece.
Okay. Yeah.
So I mean, you've got to cross an entire country, essentially on foot.
Yeah, Turkey, I don't think that would be my first choice either. Let's put that way. And Greece
they obviously weren't offering asylum for people in his situation at that time.
Yeah. Greece is having its own issues because I guess they're having a lot of, people coming over on boats and stuff like that, right? So they're quite flooded with having to turn away people and that kind of thing. So that, people want to leave and people want to come to Canada and elsewhere. I guess after Charlie Hebdo, a lot of Jews in France decided that Montreal would be a good safe place, to come, and so we're being quite welcoming to those groups, which is awesome, right? So I'm really proud that Canada is a humanitarian country, and we try to do our best, right? But it is difficult. It's a big process,
Yeah, I'm also hearing about Muslim apostates finally being welcomed there, whereas I said back at INR3, they hadn't yet made that progressive decision to do that. So you said you have UN
special consultative status. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Can you explain what that is?
Well, basically, you apply for it, and if you're approved as an NGO, then you get to have a voice at the UN, right? So we've attended a couple meetings. I'm just going to call them up here. This was a project that was started in about 2013, and we attended the 53rd session of the Commission for Social Development in February, the 59th session of the Commission on the Status of Women in March, and UN NGO Committee on Freedom of Religion in June.
It's a sad thing when you list these things out. They don't sound like they're terribly interesting on the air, but I mean, you get to say you're involved. You're doing something that is real. It's a sad thing that when you list out these important things that you're really doing, that it doesn't sound interesting in a podcast.
Okay, so I went to the one in New York in February, and that was good. Everybody was quite civil, but Rustam Singh, who is both our editor for Secular World magazine as well as the lead of this project, he attended the 59th session on the status of women, and he said it was quite a shit show. May I say that on here? Maybe it should be. Is this a clean language podcast or?
No, it doesn't matter. I mean, go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, apparently there's all kinds of religious groups, and they're holding side events, and they're pro-life and not at all fair and on the other side of things, right? Like a lot. So
you're at a conference on the status of women, and somehow this is being protested by the religious right.
Yeah, holding side events, and just basically that, when I didn't attend this one myself, but, according to Rustam, the people that were speaking and having a voice were, endorsing their religious values, like outright endorsing explicitly pro-life stances and that kind of thing. And he was stunned. He just thought it was a joke, really, So it was, we didn't have a prepared statement at that one, but he did, well, we did, but it wasn't accepted into the, a schedule kind of thing. So he did get a chance to speak, which is on YouTube, and he has great things to say, and he just kind of gets mumbled over and like, oh God, the atheist guy's talking, and then it just wanders off into No applause, nothing, right? Just kind of like,
Okay, so he goes,
whatever.
I just want to clarify, he speaks at this conference in the capacity of a representative atheist.
Yeah, yeah,
And how was
yeah.
that
At
received?
a side event. This was at a side event. Yeah.
Okay, well, how was that received?
Very coldly. Like I said, he just, he started to talk, and then, he was just kind of drowned out by voices and just like, oh, holy shit, who gave this guy the mic? That kind of attitude. Yeah.
Yeah, well, they had somebody to try to be inclusive at the Senate in America. They allowed somebody to give Hindu prayers,
Okay.
and a number of senators were interrupting those prayers, calling out, cursing him.
Hindu prayers or Muslim prayers? Because I heard one about
Hindu.
Muslim prayers just today, I think it was, or yesterday. And somebody.
Yeah, there was another similar story like that.
Okay.
But this is from years ago. This was the first time they tried to include somebody that was non-Christian, so that so that they could say that it's not exclusively Christian. They have this Hindu up there, and of course the Christians won't have any of it. They must dominate everything or else.
Yeah.
And so, they.
Yeah, but it's supposed to be the United Nations.
Yeah, well, not so much.
Yeah.
All right, so with Atheist Alliance International, what else do you do?
Educational outreach. So we support a school in Uganda, and let me
Really?
because he's a humanist prime minister. Just a sec, let me double check my facts here. Let me keep my lies straight. Clicking through screen show here.
Now, this school in Uganda, and I hope I don't have these countries confused. Is this where they were dealing with the thing with the religious people over there accusing children of being witches and so forth?
That is the same organization. That's Halea, and they've got a Stand Up for Reason campaign, which we're trying to do some fundraising on. Haven't got a great lot of publicity around that yet, but it is running. We just haven't kind of done an official relaunch on it. But yeah, and they also have the school, the Kasisi Humanist Primary School.
The very idea that grown-up adult people in positions of power anywhere in the world in the 21st century can accuse people of being witches or demonically possessed.
Yeah.
Is to me a complete outrage. Why is it that when people say things like this, why are they not immediately laughed at or medicated or sequestered someplace where they won't hurt themselves or others?
Well, I guess because they have power, and I think in a lot of cases it has to do, for example, sometimes it'll be a widow, right? An older widow who doesn't have, I guess, care around her kind of thing. So she's got money, she's been left money. And so they all accuse her of witchcraft, essentially to steal from her. And, children, I guess, who misbehave, they get labeled witches, and it's horrible. And too, they have witch camps, right? Where if you don't get killed, you can make your way to these things, but you can never leave. And if you're accompanied by a family member, they can never leave either. And, quite often these poor women get hacked and maimed, and they're elderly, they can barely take care of themselves. Food is pretty inadequate, just not great living conditions, but at least they're safer than they would be if they remained, in their homes, right? So it's terrible. It's really sad,
Yeah, I would assume that you do a lot of international travel, but I wouldn't think that you've been there, right?
I really don't do a lot of international travel. It's mostly US and Canada that I've been, traveling to. I hope to one day, although there's places I'd rather not go.
Well, there's places I'd rather go, and there's places I'd rather not go. But I'm, in 2016, I will end up in at least a couple of places that probably wouldn't have been first on my list.
Yeah. Well, if I get invited, I'd go, but it depends. Like, if my last name was Smith instead of Shellska, I might have a different attitude on that. Run my name through the passport, and I'm the only one in the world except for my mom and my dad, right? So could be a flagging kind of name, right?
Okay. Yeah. Well, I obviously have similar concerns.
Yeah.
There are some places that I wouldn't want to be recognized.
Well, you way more so than me. I don't think anybody, I don't raise that many flags, but you're a lot more famous than me. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I was one of the things I was excited about was through Atheist Alliance International, I was able to connect with these people that are hosting what they call a World Atheist Conference.
Okay.
In
Yeah.
oh gosh,
Germany, was that the one in Germany?
no,
Or is it coming up?
It's Vijayawada, India.
Okay. Okay. Right. Yeah. 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 Oh, so
And the
that
nice
worked
thing
out
about
for you.
that,
Okay.
well, the nice thing about that was that somebody I contacted there said yes, he wanted me to be at their conference, but he also wanted me to be in Helsinki in
Okay.
March. So
Nice. Nice.
yeah, so there's quite a bit of travel on the books for nothing confirmed yet, at least not with dates. But yeah, it looks like quite a tour coming up for 2016.
Oh, I hope so. That would be great. Yeah. Yeah.
I enjoy travel. I don't mind the airplanes. I have been on 26 flights so far this year, and
Well, yeah.
I've still got at least a half a dozen coming.
They're okay. Some are better than others.
Yeah. I think it's
Some
funny
you have
that
to fold yourself into a pretzel, and others like, oh, I can move, right?
yes, yeah. Probably the best flight that I had was on New Zealand Air on a 777, where I was actually able to stretch out, and that was a good thing. And others, when the first time I came back from Ireland, every plane I was on was one where my knees were jammed into the seat ahead of me.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, there was 3 different flights that I had to bounce through, and by the last couple of hours or so of that, I'm like, I can't endure this. I just can't sit in this position for this long. It was pretty bad.
Yeah.
But I do enjoy, getting out and seeing other countries and such, and it's a good time for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
So
I want to talk about you
know?
a little bit then, because you were on that too, if we don't mind.
Sure, go ahead.
How was your tour? And okay, so what was the craziest shit you saw when you were on tour with the Unholy Trinity? I'm so curious about like what the the different receptions you got from different places, and what kind of crazies did you meet, if any, and just how were they crazy? Like what was their particular brand, right?
Well, I have a hypothesis that that religious belief is not sincere belief. That when they use the word believe, they mean it's something different than I do. I mean, they use it as a verb. It's an action. It's a mind over matter. It's something that they do with determination. I don't believe
part of their identity, I suppose, right? As opposed to a method of thought.
I mean, we all have beliefs, right? But when
Yeah.
I say that I believe something, I mean that this is a logical consequence of my understanding of the facts, and my belief will obligately change as my information hopefully improves. So, but it's passive, and I have no choice in the matter. They say they have a choice, and they make the choice to believe X. And that they're going to make themselves believe X, that it is make-believe, that it is pretend. They're going to convince themselves that this is true, and they're going to find out whatever cognitive bias they can to reinforce this idea and convince themselves of this idea and reject any other idea. And as I pointed out so many times, I mean, every creationist organization posts a statement of faith wherein they admit in one way or another that they will automatically and thoughtlessly reject any and all evidence that ever arises against them, even if it's something they've ever heard of before, because they have this a priori conclusion which must be defended and promoted. So they are pretending, in a sense. I mean, if a young Earth creationist and me were both going to step into a TARDIS and shoot back 1,000,000 years, I have the feeling that we both already know what we're going to see when we open that door. And so he wouldn't take that ride, because I'm convinced that he knows. And I've actually had people admit this to me in one way or another. I mean, like several times when you prove something wrong, for example, somebody will say, well, why can't I believe what I want to believe after you've already proved that particular point wrong? Why would you want to continue to believe something after you know that it's wrong? And why are they determined to still believe it after they know it's wrong? And then another guy told me that he says, well, I'm Christian because I like to believe that, not because I think it's true. And I seriously don't think that he realized what he had just admitted to me. And I get this kind of thing all the time. Well, these may be what the facts are, but I prefer to believe this. I mean, however they phrase it, there's many different ways of saying it. but they don't believe in the sense that I believe. I believe what I do because it is evidently true, and because I think it really is true. And with these other people, they will plug their ears if they hear counter evidence, and they'll close their eyes if necessary, because they don't want to. They want to believe what they want to believe, and they don't want to know anything else. And so this is not sincere. They don't believe the same way that I believe. In effect, if you're going to tell me that you're Christian because you like to believe that, not because you think it's true, if you don't think it's true, then you don't actually believe it. You're make believing. You are pretending.
Well, you know, when you said that, it kind of occurred to me that maybe that's why some people's identity are so wrapped up in it, right? Because like you said, if I hold a false belief and I'm corrected on that belief, well, I'm going to have to reevaluate my beliefs, and I'm going to change it accordingly, kind of thing, because I'm not personally invested in those beliefs. I just, look at reality and try to negotiate and hold the best beliefs I can according to, not just my reality, but the reality of the social world that I share, right? Whereas, what I would have often described as willful ignorance, right? Because they know bloody well they're wrong, and yet they will not let this go. And so maybe these two different forms of what you and I think of as belief, as opposed to, I will not change my mind no matter what because I want to believe this. Like, that's why when you hear people say, I'm offended, which I just hate, they take it that personally, right? Does that make sense?
Well, yes, but again, it's not sincere, and it is.
I know. Yeah.
It's definitely pretentious. Like you said, they know they're wrong, and many times I've demonstrated this by giving an example where I will prove to someone. I said, I will prove evolution to your satisfaction, and as we get into the conversation, very quickly they've got walls of defense up, so that they start backpedaling, they start playing word games, and if any way they can to get out of admitting some already proven truth.
Yeah.
Because they're not allowed to concede this position, even after they know that it's wrong. So that they're just out there to defend that belief, and in fact, that's what apologetics is about. I mean,
exactly.
Think about it. Science doesn't have apologetics. We don't need to. Apologetics is where it is the practice of making excuses or rationalizing however you can to preserve a preferred conclusion against all assail.
Yeah.
Right. So if you know that you're going to have to make up whatever excuse is necessary to defend the preferred position, even against all other evidence to the contrary, well, how is that remotely true?
Yeah.
This is not any concern for truth. Truth is irrelevant. And then again, it becomes make-believe. It's literally pretend.
Yeah, it's shocking, isn't it? Well, I guess I'm more gracious on the gullible people who have just bought into it because that's all they know. Like, that's just ignorance. But the special cases we're talking about, like some of these debaters, they've been told time and time again, like, sorry, that premise doesn't hold up, and blah blah blah, and they just persist on using the same old arguments again. And that's willful ignorance, right?
Don't you love it when you've already proven an argument wrong and then they still use it again?
Yeah.
And you have to remind them, hey, we've covered this. You need to correct that. And they won't. They absolutely will not. I mean, like this one debate that I was in recently, the guy wanted to argue that macroevolution, I'll accept microevolution, but I won't accept macroevolution because that's change within kinds or change between kinds. And I had to explain to him there's no such thing as a kind, first off. And I put the burden of proof on him to show me different kinds. Name me 3 or 4 different, groups of animals, for example, that science would consider relatively closely related, but but there are in fact special creations unrelated to anything else. And of course, there's no demonstration of that. You would have to have it if creationism was true of anything at all, but they can't produce these things because everything else is in a nested hierarchy connected to every other common ancestor in a tree of life. But then I showed him 8 different references from different educational sources, textbooks, even a creationist website, all of which that gave the same definition of what macroevolution is, to show that it is change at or above the species level. So you have microevolution, which is change within a species, like breeds or subspecies, and then you have change at the macroevolutionary level, which is between species, not within species, but branching into new species. So speciation is included. And this guy would not accept that that is the definition. Doesn't matter how often you've proven it. I mean,
yeah, yeah.
and I've had this argument many times with many other people too. I mean, they have this wrong definition. They know it's the wrong definition, and they're going to defend it anyway. And they're going to tell me that, as one guy did, he said that, well, this may be what the textbooks say just so they can get around the censors, but what they really secretly teach in school, how do you secretly teach it in school?
Yeah.
Is godlessness, that macroevolution equals godlessness. No, there's no defense for this. But it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what truth is. It matters that they have this alternate reality, this pretend reality that they can believe in. And I had a real hard time trying to understand why would they do this, and what is this fixation with purpose, right? Everything has to have purpose to it. I can find the reason that, and as they say that anything happens for a reason, I can come up with the actual reasons that things happen, but they want it to be a predetermined reason, that everything is like integrated as part of some great plan, that we have this purpose. Absolutely lost on that until I watched a sermon where this guy was explaining this position, where he was absolutely lost at the idea that if atheism is true, then there's this eternity, and billions of years from now, the earth will be barren and the sun will nova, and eventually the universe will blink out of existence slowly through cosmic heat death. And it may be 13 billion years from now, but whatever we do today won't still be important 13 billion years from now. So why does anything matter? If what I do today isn't important forever, and I'm not remembered forever, or important forever, or live forever, then there's no reason to keep breathing. There's no reason to prolong life. There's no reason to ease suffering, because we're all going to die anyway, man. It just doesn't matter, man. It was morose. I mean,
well, don't people like that kind of scare you? Like,
yes, because
if that's their only incentive to do good, right? In
this same sermon, this preacher explained how, when you have a child who's dying of cancer, that the best thing you can do is lie to the child's parents that that they're going to be an angel and that they're going to ascend into this beautiful. No, and don't tell me that you're going to pray for me in a situation like that either, because that is not. When I'm dealing with a real world situation, I appreciate real world answers. Yeah, and it better fucking be real. Just imagine when people come up and put their hand on your shoulder and say, "I'll pray for you." How could you possibly feel better because of that? I mean, if you're in this situation and a child who really, really believes in Santa, really genuinely and sincerely believes in Santa, walks up to you and says that she'll write to Santa for a solution to your problem, would that make you feel any better?
No. But
now,
I guess,
what if it's an adult who walks up and says that they're going to write a letter to Santa for you? How doesn't that just make it worse?
Yeah, it does. But I mean, people don't often say that to me, right? Because everybody knows I'm an atheist, and you just kind of,
but people say that to me because they know that I'm an atheist.
Oh, that's kind of, see, they're just being assholes, right? But, like, my thoughts are with you, if there's anything I can do or something, like, these are just kind sentiments. And so if somebody says that to me, it probably doesn't mean all that much, even to them, certainly not to me. And B, it's just, try to take it graciously or whatever, right? But then, like you say, if they're doing it to you just because they know you're an atheist and they're just being dicks, that's when you just say, well, thank you, I'll think for you, right?
One of the arguments that this guy gave was that, that we atheists have nothing we can say to somebody that's dealing in that situation. And in that respect, he's right. Well, there's nothing we can say.
And there's nothing anybody can say,
Right, well, that's exactly the point.
Yeah.
He says he can say something because he can lie. What? No.
Well, then, he can say it, but is it going to give anybody comfort, or is it just going to make them feel worse?
Some flowery bullshit to pretend, but that's not going to. That doesn't help. That is a lie. That's not something you can say, or at least for me, it would be morally wrong to lie to somebody and especially feed them some complete bullshit story like that, even if you find someone so deluded that could pretend and escape the harsh reality and imagine some other reality, some pretend Candyland that they want to live in, it's still morally wrong to state things as fact that are not true and that you have no reason to even believe.
I totally agree. Yeah.
So what else do you do with AAI, and what else does AAI do?
Well, what was the third thing I was talking about? I talked about educational outreach, our asylum project, right? UN consult. What did I talk about? Did I talk about UN consultative status or asylum project before?
Yes, you did.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So asylum project. So again, we're just trying to kind of launch that. Get it. I've talked about everything, I think, except for a few initiatives we're coming up with, right? The Halea project.
Give me some idea.
What's that?
Give me some idea.
Well, we've got the Halea Stand Up for Witch, Stand Up Against Witchcraft Accusations. Another one we're going to be launching pretty soon is the Guatemala group wants to start a library, and by that it kind of means a community center where there'll be a selection of secular books, but it'll also be kind of like a meeting place for talks for children and programs and stuff like that, and access to computers and that sort of thing. And let's see. I'm trying to, we have aligned with the Anti-Blasphemy Coalition. Are you familiar with that?
No, I'm not.
Okay, that's kind of a worldwide initiative. It was started by CFI Canada and Atheist Ireland post Charlie Hebdo. And both those countries, including some of the other ones that are a part of that group, have still blasphemy laws in the book. Like here in Canada, we've got one. It really never gets used, but the fact that it's on the book, we want to see it done away with. Iceland just had a recent victory where they did away with their legislation. They're working on it in Ireland, and there's other initiatives going on in other countries.
You got to be careful about that, because as soon as Iceland took off their blasphemy law, suddenly they have a temple of Asatru going up.
A what? Temple of what?
They're building an Asatru temple.
What does that mean? I haven't heard that.
The worship of Thor and Odin.
Oh, okay. Well, what do you want?
Yeah. Because that's what happened, like in the 10th century or whatever, when they insisted on making Iceland a Christian country, and you have this small rebellion going on ever since. Well, finally, they can worship and break out the old gods.
Well, who was pivotal in that country was the Pirate Party, right? The Pirate Party, they were taken quite seriously. We have a pirate party here in Canada, but I don't know, how much of a profile they have, shall we say. But that was kind of interesting to hear.
I'm also pleased with Atheist Ireland on the advances that they did with the blasphemy law, because I think it was as soon as that they initiated the blasphemy law was when they held the World Atheist Conference right there.
Okay.
Just daring people. What are you going to do? We have a blasphemy law. We're having an atheist conference. Believe me, we're blaspheming.
Yeah.
We're doing it all day.
Yeah.
And I got on Irish radio in Dublin. I was on their national radio show. I can't remember what the Hugh Lenahan was. That's the only name I can remember. Was the guy I was interviewing. But I do this thing on national radio where I'm arguing against the director for religious instruction. Yeah, some PhD clergyman with the collar and the whole bit. And I got to say on national radio in Ireland with a blasphemy law that the reason that the Bible was proven wrong on every testable claim that it makes is because it was written by ignorant and bigoted savages who obviously had no idea what they were talking about. Okay, blasphemy law applies here.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We have it here in Canada too, but it just gets ignored, right? But it still shouldn't be on the books, because you never know when it's the fact that it could be invoked for some ridiculous reason is exactly why it needs to go, and that's true across the world, obviously, right? Saudi Arabia trying to shall we talk about Saudi Arabia and how they're trying to get blasphemy law across the world, or whatever it is that they're trying to do?
By all means.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's going to fly. Yeah.
No, I strongly support the idea that anybody can believe whatever they like. Okay.
No, of course.
Seriously.
Yeah.
When you get into teaching classes on things that you know are not true. This is morally reprehensible.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about creationism, we're talking about things we can prove are not true.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you just need to be able to come out and say that. Like when you're welcome to believe that everybody on the GOP ticket this year is really secretly an alien lizard from the Sirius star system. You can believe that if you want to, but you don't get to teach it in school.
Yeah, and you don't get to build legislation around it either. Right.
Yeah, if there's no mainstream scientific support for it, then you're done. That's it. And so it bothers me enormously that people give credence to creationism. Well, they are welcome to believe they're welcome to believe it. They're not welcome to teach it.
Yeah.
And there's a huge difference there. And we need to be able to say, regardless of somebody's right to believe things, they have a right to be wrong, and this is wrong.
Yeah. Now, having said that, apparently there was a study where kids were taught both, but they were taught creationism as being bad science. And apparently they actually got a more robust appreciation of what the proper scientific method was, because it was compared as here's bullshit and here's real science, right?
Yeah, we performed that same experiment here at the house with my kids, and we had and I was really moved at the way that this worked out. My wife was explaining to her kids about how the seasons change. How do we explain the change in the seasons? And then, well, you come up with this mythology, and you have this girl who's like picking fruit one day, and she gets she's taken by the Lord of the Underworld, and because she eats 6 pomegranate seeds while she's in the underworld, she cannot leave. And so her mother, who was the goddess of plants or whatever, I can't remember, goddess of spring. I can't believe I can't remember this mythology. Well, anyway, she only gets to get her daughter back for half the year. So for half the year, she's happy, and you have spring and summer and beautiful plants and everything. But then her daughter has to go back into the underworld, and then because the goddess of life or whatever goes sad, and so everything becomes winter again. And this is the explanation of the spring and summer. And so she asked her son, "Do you know any other explanation for the seasons?" And so because he was like 10 years old and in school, he says, yes, it's the angle of the earth and the period of rotation around the sun. And she said, "Do you think they should teach both in school?" Mm-hmm. And he said, "No, because one of them is real and the other one is just a story."
Yeah, and that's the other thing.
Thank you. Now let's talk about Genesis.
Yeah. It's not just both. It's not like, there's the Christian creation story, and then there's evolution. There's like, First Nations origins myths, and there's, every major religion and all the minor ones as well have their own creation stories. Like, when are you going to teach science if you're going to be teaching all this, and give them all equal and balanced way,
And give them all hooey. Yeah, when I was in school, they taught, for whatever reason, they taught this in English class. I don't know what this had to do with English, but they wanted to teach Greek mythology, and also Roman mythology and Norse mythology. And I thought, well, Greek and Roman mythology are practically the same thing. And why do we get this and the Norse mythology? Why can't we get Persian mythology, Egyptian mythology, Sumerian? Yeah. And the teachers said that they weren't allowed to teach those because they were controversial.
What? Really?
Yeah.
Controversial? How?
So that's what I couldn't figure out until I got out of high school and found these books and started reading them, and then I realized, the reason that you can't teach Egyptian and Sumerian and Babylonian mythology and so forth is because this is where Western Abrahamic religion comes from.
Okay. Yeah.
So the original version.
Then it looks like, oh my goodness, somebody might have plagiarized a few things.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
So it's basically you're looking at the mythology that was written by the grandfathers of the biblical authors.
Yeah.
So here's the original versions, and all the important bits that you want to retain from the Bible, that part's not even there. It's all the superfluous details that are there.
Did you ever learn like Epic of Gilgamesh or anything in
Oh yes, and there are beautiful things about that. One of the things that outraged people was the fact that Gilgamesh had a homosexual relationship.
Yeah.
Irritated the crap out of people in my school. The fact that you have the story of Noah, and it's clearly not Noah, that it's, you know, that all the important elements of the Noah story that you're supposed to take back as a Christian, all of those are gone. It's, you know, you're releasing the dove, you're releasing the raven, and the bodies in the river, damming up the waves, and the sacrifice that you give at the end, and how you build the depth of the flood, which is 15 cubits, which creates to roughly 22 feet of depth. These details are all the same. We know that we're talking about the same story. And we know that archaeology and geology also point to a flood of the area of the Shurapak in the Iraqi floodplain around 2900 BC, the end of the Jemdot Nasur period. So we know exactly when it happened. We know the extent of it, and we can read 3 or 4 different versions of it in the Sumerian king list and the Epic of Atrahasis and in Numa Elish and so forth. Well, I'm not sure about Numa Elish, but the other ones all have their own version of the flood, and these same details are still present. So we know, even though the names of the character changes from Zuasudra to Utnapishtim to Atrahasis, it's the same story in each case.
Yeah.
So obviously this is the original version, and then the Mesopotamian empires fell and everybody stopped writing in syllabic text for like 1,000 years. These stories were kept alive by oral traditions only, and then they were written down again 1,000 years later, and obviously this was the same story, just slightly embellished, and you know, some of the details changed so that it has been adapted to a new religion.
Yeah.
Thus the controversy of why we can't teach other mythologies.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah.
So regarding what's going on in Uganda, what language do they speak over there primarily?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't speak it.
I've talked to a couple of people.
One of our board members is from there, so if I need help with that kind of thing, But typically, I mean, I've been communicated to in English, so to be honest, I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, there's a lot that goes on in that area that outrage me, and it's
treatment of LGBTQ people and all this. It's just obscene, Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of those places that you'd rather not go, but you're kind of inspired to go anyway, just because it pisses you off so much that things are so jacked up over there.
Yeah.
All right. So what else? Is there anything else from AAI?
Not really. I guess I just want to, I wanted to share a story about a gentleman here that lives in Calgary who did, get asylum here in Canada successfully. And he had quite a horrible story. He came out as atheist. He was active online and stuff like that. And his family literally put him in a basement, neglected him, didn't feed him properly, beat him. Finally, they sent him off to, I'm not going to name any names or anything like that, obviously, but they sent him off to be rehabilitated. And he, came out, swore that he was converted back to Islam, and he and his father were going to a mosque, and he literally fled into the street, right? Took off to Malaysia with nothing. And now he's safe here in Canada and been granted asylum. And, he's trying to get his family over and stuff like that. But, one little anecdotal thing on my radar, like how many of these stories are there? And, I do get communicated with people who have some really, really heartbreaking stories. So I guess I want to give a plug for Faisal's organization, movements.org, because they're very helpful. They work with us a little bit too in terms of, giving us advice and helping us with our cases. And
yeah, he's been working with me a bit too.
Yeah, he's awesome. And another organization I wanted to mention was the Secular Policy Institute, because they're trying to do some great international work in terms of changing policy. Like it's primarily U.S. based, but for example, the same-sex marriage legislation is going to resonate well outside the U.S. and hopefully change the perceptions of other countries. And so hopefully in the future we'll be working a little bit more than we do already with the International Humanist and Ethical Union, and maybe even Amnesty. I'm trying to get some inroads there. So collaboration, we need everybody's help. Those of us who can speak out safely need to be really adamant about defending human rights and freedom of speech and all that kind of stuff. And whatever you do, whatever your take is as a secular person, atheist, agnostic, free thinker, whatever you want to describe as, pick your passion, and even if it's, you know, cleaning up your street once a year or whatever. We have our street cleaning thing here in Calgary. If you want to do that, do that. If you just like to go to Skeptics in the pub, have fun with your friends. But if you want to do some activism, there's so much out there to do, you know.
But why would you bother doing this if it's not going to matter in 15 billion years?
Because it matters now. It matters now, right? You know, suffering. Like I'm, you know, I guess I've been influenced by Sam Harris and his take on suffering. We understand, and a lot of it's got to do through science, that we understand that living creatures can suffer. Like I often think of Descartes and how he did just horrible experiments on dogs and stuff like that, because there was this idea that, you know, this mechanistic view of the universe and the world, and these weren't considered, you know, beings that could suffer. They were lesser than human and all this. And so, you know, if you hurt a dog, it was just yelping was just a mechanical response. And, you know, like I think it was Shermer that wrote about, I think the 16 or 1700s, a form of entertainment was to throw cats in a giant sack and light them on fire and hear them scream. And this is public entertainment, right? We're often accused, you know, sometimes we're accused of moral relativism. Well, I don't like that label. What I think of myself is a moral contextualist. And I think the more we understand about the world around us, the more we can use science to help us cultivate our compassion and our, you know, reason, and use that to enact good in the world. Hopefully the better we become, you know. And so, yeah, I call myself a moral contextualist, right? So don't accuse me of moral relativism, anybody out there.
So, you know, when
yeah,
you did your world convention that was in Germany, I happened to be in the Netherlands at the time, or like, you know, the weekend prior, before I found out that it was even there. It was frustrating that I didn't know about it in advance, because I was a 5-hour drive away. It would have cost me.
Well, that was put on for
nothing.
a German group. Yeah, we were promoting it, but we weren't so much active in planning it. But yeah, it was on our website. But that was actually the IBKA in Germany that put that one on.
Yeah.
So
the awkward thing was,
if I'd known you didn't know, I would have let you know.
I looked at the roster of speakers, and it was like all people I knew.
Okay.
So
yeah,
I thought it would have been cool to go. Where is your
yeah.
next world convention?
Well, we're not planning conventions anymore. What we're doing is, when our associates and affiliates hold conventions, we try to support them by doing fundraising or helping, you know, line up speakers anymore. We just don't have the resources to, you know, take that initiative up to, you know, planning a convention is a lot of work. And so volunteer, become members, help us out, right? But, you know, no plans in the future for that. But certainly, if you check our website, our member organizations are always having awesome conferences. And you know about the one in Russia coming up, right? I told you about that one?
No, I
Or
don't.
did I? Oh, okay. So that's in June of 2016. And it's in the planning stages now. But you know what? I'm going to put you in touch with the organizer, and maybe he'd like to come and you'd like to go and speak.
I want to tell you what, and I'm not even kidding about this. If I were invited to go to Russia to give a presentation, I would give it in Russian.
Would you really? You can speak Russian?
No, I cannot speak Russian. I had a couple years of beginning Russian, but I've got a little bit of the gist of it. I know enough that I have given presentations in Russian.
Wow,
it would be fun to do that.
Yeah, that would
and
be awesome.
I have plenty of tutors that speak Russian that would be able to help me work my way through that.
I took a tiny bit of Russian years and years ago, but I've forgotten pretty. You know, if you don't keep it up, you don't. Remember it.
That was a sad thing. Once upon a time, I took it beginning Russian for a year, and then I took it a second year because they didn't have the intermediate Russian, and then they just canceled the intermediate Russian altogether, which was frustrating. Suddenly, there's no way to learn it unless you go there.
Yeah. What
and
about
then
online?
Putin started being a dick, and Putin started being a dick, so I didn't go.
Yes, he has. Yeah.
All right, so the Russian version of Donald Trump.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
All right, well, Christine, is there any parting words that you'd like to share?
I don't think so. I think unless you have anything you want to ask me, I think I told everybody to become members and to enact yourselves and use your voice if you're safe to do so and all that kind of stuff, right? So.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if you're not safe to do so, if you're able to contact somebody that can,
Yeah.
by all means.
Yeah. Let
All right,
us be known. There's channels out there that don't make yourself vulnerable, right? Just.
All right. And you want me to include any links to contact you or contact your organization with this video?
Yeah. Well, do you know the website atheistalliance.org is where all our information is, and including my email address and stuff like that. So yeah. Yeah.
All right, well, I'm going to close it up then, and thank you very much, Ms. Shellska, President of Atheist Asylum International.
Thanks. It's been a